Okay, good evening, everyone. Tonight we're going to go through organisational and group dynamics. Just for the benefit of those who weren't here, I was saying earlier that my thoughts around the design and the sequence of training is to start really high and broad and then narrow it down to our own personal messaging. So if you can think of what we've done so far, the strategy, that really big picture. And then we're thinking about, okay, what's the strategic intent that we're trying to achieve? And then, okay, what are the risks with that? How can I consider the risk? And I want to implement something new therefore that needs a bit of change. So how am I going to manage that change and the risk within the organisations? And then we come down to what we're doing today, organisational and group dynamics. So how does the organisation I'm looking to change sit, and how does it look on paper? What type of an organisation is it, and how are the teams and the groups and the individuals within that organisation, how do they function? And then once we know that, we can go, okay, how can we influence? So I'm in a position without authority, so how can I influence without authority within those organisations that we've just looked at? And then the month after that, it'll be down to, okay, how do I deliver this? How do I speak well in public, and how do I craft my message? And then finally, we'll roll into advocacy and representation. Now, I've thought about all the big picture stuff, and we've narrowed it down to my message and how am I going to advocate for that and get myself in front of the right people, and then you'll actually deliver your pitch. So yeah, that was the thinking behind it, and that's where we're headed. So we're kind of halfway through the journey at the moment. So hopefully you're seeing it rolling and your project's growing along with it and developing and getting a bit more clarity around what you're doing, who you need to speak to, what the outcomes might be, what the roadblocks might be, and things like that. So before we kick off, I'd like to just begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land in which we're meeting today, wherever in Australia that you might be. And I'd also like to pay my respects to any elders past and present, and any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders here tonight. Specifically tonight, we're going to go through what organisational dynamics actually is, have a look at the group dynamics side of things as well, and a little bit on good governance. Now, when I'm talking good governance, we're not thinking of it from a board director sort of point of view. It's just the governance around good decision making as a leader. And we're covering these because understanding how organisations function and how teams operate within organisations are crucial for being a good organisational leader. And by understanding that, you can therefore create an environment that really promotes collaboration, adaptability, high performance, things like that, knowing and understanding what the bigger organisation needs are. So hopefully by the end of the session, you'll be able to actually describe different types of organisational structures, understand what good governance looks like, know the different stages of group development, and also the functions and the behaviours that you will see from groups and people within groups. That said, before we kick off, get you to cast your minds back to the launch. Excuse me. Specifically the motivational theory and the self-determination theory that we spoke about. Anyone want to jump off mute and try and summarise one or both of those?
I might see if my speaker works first. Does that work?
No, it's not. I can't hear you at all. Joking.
Okay.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Because that's what happened, I think, a few weeks ago when I was trying to talk. Sorry, Aaron, do you mind repeating that question again?
Yeah, so self-determination theory and or motivational theory. We spoke about those a bit at the launch. Can you summarise one of those?
Yes. So self-motivation, basically, well, self-determination is where you inspire the motivation from the people themselves, usually by, um, basically, yeah, inspiration is a way to do so. Whereas external motivation is, yeah, using external means to do so. I think that's probably not exact, but roughly, but I'll let the others.
Yep, not a bad go. Anyone else want to add to that?
I can, if you
Thank you,
like.
Linda.
So it's basically a psychological theory that states people have three psychological needs, and one of them is autonomy, relatedness, and competence. And so for people to be motivated, they need to feel a sense of autonomy and to some extent within the limits of or the constraints of the rules and regulations. They need to feel that they have a choice or a perception of choice. And that's what sometimes happens, giving people the perception of choice. Relatedness, they need to feel that it's relevant to them, and they need to feel that they're competent enough to do the task, or it could be that we need to upskill them to be able to do the task. And so by doing so, by managing these three things, you can improve people's motivation. Typically, motivation is either intrinsic or extrinsic, but sometimes it can be extrinsic motivators can become internalized to become intrinsic motivators.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Perfect. Well done. Yeah, and that relatedness is also around that belonging and that sense of belonging and feeling connected with others and a connection to the work you're doing in the organisation that you're with as well. To add to the intrinsic and extrinsic motivation that Linda spoke about, do we remember we had a continuum of motivation? At one end, the let's call it the low quality end of motivation. Do we remember what was up that end?
I think incentives was up that end, and rewards,
Yeah.
like financial rewards.
Yeah. The good old carrot and the stick, rewards and punishment, is at the lower end of quality. It's definitely a motivator, and it is definitely something that you can use at the right time. If there are, for example, if there's a horrible task that nobody really loves, like data entry, or there's real time pressure to get something finished by Friday, for example, there might be an incentive to, hey everyone, this is a horrible job, but we've got to get it done by Friday. If we get it done, everyone can have Monday off, and then right, everyone gets in there and does it. So it's a good for short term gain, because as soon as that level of motivation is gone, whether it's the carrot or the stick, the threat of punishment, as soon as that has been removed, people return to the status quo. And so what we want to do is increase high quality motivation. And that is where people internalize the value of the jobs that they're doing. So they may not enjoy it by any means, but they see that it's a really good purpose and they value the work that they're doing. And then right at the top end, we're reaching that intrinsic motivation where people actually really enjoy what they're doing and they get a lot of self-benefit out of it. So remember, as leaders, we need to remember this, because it's very easy to get stuck in the day-to-day and operationalize everything we do and just focus on KPIs and targets, outputs and all that sort of stuff. And what we really need to take time to do is reset every once in a while and think, okay, so how are my people going? Do they feel competent? Am I allowing them a sense of autonomy within boundaries? Because we can't just let everybody go off and do what they want, but we provide structure and boundaries. And how can I encourage autonomy within those boundaries? And how can I increase belongingness? How can I make everyone feel like they're cared for and that they're more than just a number? So we have to remember that. And try to keep it in the front of our minds, basically, to ensure that we continue to create the environment where people can thrive and therefore have some great outputs for the organisation. And that links into what we're doing today, because we're looking at group dynamics and how people function and the roles that people play. And, remembering self-determination theory and remembering motivational theory will help us bring out the best in our groups and our people. So, when we talk about organisational dynamics, what do you think that means, or what does it mean to you? Please jump off mute and have a go. CG.
The people involved, their behavior, I think their motivations, how they function. I think, their personalities, what they bring to the organization, what skill set, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Pretty much it. Anyone else want to add to it?
I think the interpersonal relationships are going to be quite important to the overall dynamics as well.
Yeah, yes, they are, Lyndall. Yep, that's correct. Wayne?
I guess just understanding where everyone's at in terms of their baseline intrinsic values. So it's easier to sort of predict and strategize change management.
Yeah. And that's, good link to change management there as well. Jackie, sorry.
I think it's the way we do things around here. It's the
Yes.
unsaid strategic plan. So it's the, it's a little bit of culture, and it's just the way we do things. It's the way we operate.
Yeah. Yep. Spot on. Good. That was it. Yeah. All of that summed it up really well. So when we think organisational dynamics, it's those patterns of behaviour. It's how people interact together, and it's those relationships within the organisation. You guys all mentioned it's those things like culture, the structure, the processes that we have, the impact leadership has. It all affects overall effectiveness of that organisation. Good work. Okay, so structure and then I guess productivity and resistance are all very closely intertwined. And the structure of an organisation also directly impacts the relationships that people can have within an organisation, mostly because of how information flows and the structure and how decisions get made. Where things where we don't have good structure and good organisational planning, that's when things fail to happen and systems are perceived to be broken. So when we think about organisational design at a high level, there are quite a lot of different structures that are referenced. Things you might hear words like functional or matrixed or networked organisations. However, they all kind of fall under these two overarching structures, so either mechanistic or organic. They're quite contrasting in their approach, as you can see by the diagrams there. I'll compare them a little bit more in the next couple of slides. But that said, regardless of the structure, things like communicating clearly, always using the right channels, adopting good governance principles are essential regardless of the formation that the organisation decides to set itself up in. And we, as leaders, therefore need to have a good understanding of the organisational structure to be able to influence within that structure effectively. Because if we're trying to operate in an organic basis, if we're in a mechanistic organisation, it's not going to work, because we'll be asking the wrong questions of the wrong people, basically, and trying to seek decisions where they can't be made. So mechanistic structure, firstly, characterised, I guess, by centralised decision making. That's one of the biggest differentiators here. There's normally very clear hierarchical lines linked to authority and the authority for decision making, and an organisation will look to standardise the way it does things and work for efficiencies as well. So decision-making authority is normally concentrated at the top of a hierarchy. So there can be multiple hierarchies within an organisation, but decision-making authority is normally at the top. When it comes to how formal things are, mechanistic organisations normally have really well-defined rules. There's always standard operating procedures. There's job descriptions which say what every single person is required to do. Work is normally divided into like specialist roles, and the roles and responsibilities that comes with teams are quite defined. And there's a very strong emphasis on control and adherence to rules and regulations. So I guess with that in mind, just hearing all that, what type of an organisation do you think would have a mechanistic structure? Suchi?
A large hospital or a large organization that has policies and procedures in place, I guess, where there is less flexibility and it's like it has a proper procedure that this is the way it is to be done. So mainly larger organizations, I guess.
Yeah. Yep. Anyone else?
That looks to me exactly like the new organisational structure that's just been put out for the GP clinic where I work.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Very hierarchical.
Yep. Wayne?
Yeah, I guess mostly if you're a small business, oftentimes it's important to have that hierarchical nature because oftentimes things need to be running and they're running things. So it's important to focus the resource from the top down to ensure there's some sort of consistency.
Yeah, could be. I've just noticed in the chat, some politics, universities, the college, military organisations, law firms, accounting firms, all of those good. Vanessa?
Yeah, I was just going to echo the same, like the college, quite a big organisation, and I think it's similar to that. And I think government would have a similar hierarchical kind of structure.
Yeah. Yes, all of that's correct. Yep, definitely spot on. Okay, so organic structures then, on the flip side of it, are really characterised by the ability to decentralise their decision making, and roles are more flexible, and the people get to focus on a bit more innovation and being more adaptable in the roles and the actual work that they do. So you can imagine that if you're looking at that diagram, instead of everything going up to the top, decision-making authority might be dispersed around at different levels of the organisation, which gives the organisation as a whole and the teams within it a lot more autonomy and a lot more independence for the decision-making cycles that need to occur. So decision-making cycles can often happen a lot quicker because a person here might be authorised to make that decision. It might only be one step away from you, rather than having to go up a hierarchical chain of command up to a decision maker that might be 2 or 3 steps above you, and it takes a week to get there, a week to get there. Then that person's actually got a question, so it comes back down and then goes back up. So that's what slows things down. The roles and responsibilities can be quite fluid. Employees normally take on multiple tasks and adapt to change with circumstances as they present themselves, rather than, no, this is my job and this is my lane and this is where I stay. Organic organisations really focus strongly on teamwork, collaboration, cooperation, things like that. There's a lot of information sharing that goes on, and there's normally a strong focus on innovation, being creative, experimenting, trying new things. So I guess with that in mind, what do you think some examples of organisations might be that would seek to build an organic structure? Vanessa.
So I've got a few cousins in kind of like entrepreneurial, startup businesses, and then the other thing is like Amazon, and cousin that's worked for Amazon sounds relatively similar. Amazon, Google.
Yeah.
Creative.
Yeah, funnily, you would think Google being so large would be quite hierarchical, but I think one of their things that they try to differentiate themselves with is the organic structure and the decentralized decision making, which is different for someone that an organisation that large. George.
I'm having the feeling that RSGB has organic structure. I'm not sure if you approve with that or not. And I think for both structures, any organization can have the both structure in different departments or different departments, but also like maybe overall, if you have a big view, maybe they have specific structure, but for different departments, different leaders, they can have different approach.
Yeah, you're stealing my next teaching point, George. But yes, but can we go back to the college? Why do you think the college has an organic structure?
Well, I think, I don't think, for example, the president of the Royal College, he will not take a decision by himself. So they have different meeting, different department. They can get feedback from, let me say it this way. Maybe before joining the Future Leader program, I thought Royal College is going in a way, the members are going in a different way, or our feedback about what's happening in the college is different from what exactly is happening inside the college. So I don't think someone will take like a decision by himself or themselves without having review from different people in the college, different councils, the board. Maybe the board will come back with a definite or final decision, but they listen to everyone. It is not like a solo decision.
Yeah, I can see how that would work. I guess decision making at that strategic level, is definitely brought in together as the board with some advice and guidance from the exec at times. And that, however, then to operationalize that strategy, the employees of the college are quite hierarchical in nature, because we have our CEO, then we have our chiefs, and then we've got our heads of sitting under the chiefs, and then the senior managers and managers under that, and then the team leads and the coordinators and the administrators. So it's very, there's lots of different levels, and all the teams are made up of some sort of head, management, lead, multiple leads, and then, specialists underneath that. And it's that pyramid sort of a structure. But as you raised, I'll get to you in a second, Maya, as you did raise, organisations can have both within it. So just because the college, for example, might have a hierarchical structure, let's say within GP training, it might be quite organic because we might be very flat with regards to hierarchy and who might be able to make decisions. It might be based on regions rather than job roles, that sort of thing. So there can be flexibility in organisations that chop and change based on the roles and functions that each business unit might have. They may want to adopt something quite hierarchical if there's high risk, yet if it's we're looking for new ways forward and we want to be quite innovative in an area, we might bring together a team of people that is very flat and organic in their setup to achieve a different outcome within a larger hierarchical organisation. Right.
I have some comments, but then also a question. Certainly with both of my roles, both in my subspecialty GP clinic, but then also in my medical education role with a not-for-profit provider, not the college, but with GPEX. Both roles, I think, do have quite organic structures. I think largely driven by the need to innovate and pull different people in across different projects.
Yeah.
But what my question is, you never ever see an org chart that looks like this. Even if it might function like this, I've never come across an org chart that really has that interconnected web. There's always that mechanistic structure whenever you look at an org chart. Should realistically these organizations have these organic org charts if they function in this way?
Yeah. Sometimes you can't see my cursor, but the lines that, so in this one you can see the three little mini hierarchical ones going off in different directions. The lines that join from the middle person top left to the right person on the top right, sometimes you'll see that as a dotted line on org charts. So you might have a hierarchical one because it's easier to show reporting lines, and then you might see dotted lines going off to other groups because there's a relationship here that needs to work together. So it might, that's how I've normally seen organic relationships within a org chart actually set up. I think this diagram here is more for teaching purposes than actual how you might see it on a proper org chart sort of a setup.
Okay.
Yeah. But yes, creative industries, startups, tech companies, all those examples you guys gave, spot on for who would more likely choose an organic structure. If you find that there's a bias for innovation, being quickly adaptable, rapid decision making, having an organic structure is probably better. You do definitely need, as an organisation, very clear purpose and very clear vision and guiding documents so that regardless of where you sit within the organisation, you can make a decision that moves the organisation forward towards its eventual outcome where it's heading. You don't want to be making decisions independently of each other. That's actually pulling in two different directions. So that's one of the key things with organic structures is understanding the whole picture a lot better, because you're not just dealing with your little lane anymore with a clear little pathway here. You have to know what the organisation is looking to achieve and ensure that your decisions are made in accordance with what the whole of the organisation needs to achieve. So this slide is just so when you get back to it at another day, you've got a nice comparison of the two structures, and just remember, organisations don't have to choose one and stick with it. Same with everything that we've really done so far, whether it's strategy, risk, change management. You don't have to pick a model or a methodology and stick with it. But as long as you are considering the model or the methodology of change or risk or how you approach strategy or how you're designing a organisation, it will hold you in good stead, because frameworks will help us not miss things as leaders, especially when our core business might be here and our leadership might take a secondary role, especially on the bigger organisational side of things. Rightio. So what we'll do now, I'll just jump out into breakout rooms. Now, Chatham House rules, I hope we all remember. Free, please do use real stories. Try to, we'll keep names, dates and places concealed to protect the innocent, sort of thing. And don't let it leave the breakout room, sort of thing. If you do need to talk about something that was discussed in a breakout room, it's the other day in the breakout room we discussed this, and you give a broad. You don't name organisations and people and all that sort of stuff. Alrighty. So yeah, describe your organisation. Is it mechanistic? Is it organic? Is it a combination of both? And go through how do you think it works? If you're in a hierarchical structure, what makes it good? But also, what struggles appear because of it? And do you have any ideas on how you might combat that or fix it or work around it? And as always, have a spokesperson ready to go when we get back. So we'll just do a quick 15 minutes. Any questions before we go into breakout rooms? Cool. Okay, so there should be 3 or 4 of you in each room. Should be up on your screen now. I'll see you in 15 minutes. Who's trying not to giggle?
You always do this. You bring us back when we're just having a really good conversation.
Sorry. Do share. That's what we're here for.
No.
Alrighty. So, apart from the good conversations, was anyone talking about their organisation and got anything to share on that? Wayne.
So our group, we have Vanessa, Richard, and Dennis. So and I kind of openly use my organization as an example, and happy to share. So our clinic, which we took over not long ago, and initially with the previous ownership, it was with a sort of highly mechanical sort of approach where everything came from one owner who's had very limited operational background, but kind of highly sort of concentrated power. And then when I took over a couple of months ago, I took the organic approach because I thought that was a good strategy to give everyone a voice, and we did get a lot of voices. People were happy that they were in this collaborative problem solving. So it went really well. Everyone contributed to what they thought the new structure could become moving forward. And then recently we've identified the need to then kind of shift back to that mechanical approach when, everyone kind of got too creative and too autonomous. And shifts sometimes were not filled, and a lot of absences, and it's starting to sort of affect the operation. And so we had another meeting and then kind of said, let's work out what the new standard would be. And this is the green zone, this is the yellow zone where people are still allowed to figure it out themselves and seek help and grow. But these are our red zones, so don't go to the red zone.
Yeah.
So that's kind of we kind of talked about the art and science of leadership and the importance of what you talked about, like the organizational dynamics. It's important to understand everyone's intrinsic value and then try and sort of strategize our approach moving forward, so that when you try and reapply the mechanical, tight approach, people then still believe in the organization because they know that they've been looked after.
It's a great example, Wayne. Thank you. And I think it's a really good example of lessons learned, because I mean you won't always make a great decision and it turn out rosy. It may work for a while, but then as you experienced, situations change, and then the decision you made 6 months ago all of a sudden is no longer the best decision for the organisation anymore. So we have to be adaptable. Perfect. Well done.
I was going to say, Wayne also has a traffic light system, which is quite handy. If you wanted to share it, Wayne.
Yes, like, red zones, don't go there.
Don't want to have a race car in the red.
No.
Maya.
So we had a really interesting discussion about whether GP clinics who operate essentially on contractor doctors can ever truly have a mechanistic structure, because it's essentially a collection of independent GPs who operate their own businesses within that banner of the clinic. So, they're obviously allowed to have and should have a lot of autonomy in how they operate, and there should be a lot of collaboration, I suppose, in terms of how they want their businesses to run within the clinic. So, it was just a discussion that we all had and talked about our thoughts on that. I think largely the consensus was that it probably is or should operate on an organic structure, but that a lot of GP contractors perhaps actually would prefer that it had a mechanistic structure and like for somebody else to make decisions for them.
So forgive my ignorance, but in that sort of a setting, is there who sets the overarching strategy and manages operations as the umbrella organisation that all the contractors work under? Who does that?
Yeah, so I mean, I can only really speak for myself and in terms of it being not a corporate owned practice, but certainly the practice principles set the overall structure and tone, and I suppose provide that overarching culture and why the practice operates. Within a corporate owned GP clinic, then you're obviously further removed from the top. So I can't really comment on that, but I suppose you'd probably have less of a say in that setting.
And I'm making an assumption here, in those corporate settings you probably have more people who just come in, blinkers on, do the work, go home, rather than feel invested in the outcome of the organisation as a whole. Would that be a safe assumption?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there might be people here who can comment a bit more about that if anyone here works for a corporate as a contractor. But that would be my assumption as well.
Cool. Interesting. Okay, we might continue on. That said, any questions on anything we've covered so far? Suchi?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, is it possible for an organization to be purely mechanistic, like rather than, because in our room we were having conversations about a balanced approach, because sometimes you may notice that yes, from the top down there are mechanistic structures, we have the CEO, the coup and everything, but sometimes in the lower departments, in the department itself, you'll have an organic approach or an organic structure. And again, it depends on the relationships that you have amongst your colleagues. Sometimes you may feel very comfortable with the CEO. So directly you may talk to the CEO as a friend that, okay, this issue has come up, or not actually taking that issue directly to the CEO. But then because you share a good relationship, you just bring it up in normal conversation, and that structure of being mechanistic, that gets broken down into the organic structure. So
I think what things like the big organisations, like military organisations as well, regardless of, I think, of the relationships and how interpersonal you might be able to be, decision-making authority and the where risk is owned, so organisational risk, where it's owned, that becomes very hierarchical. So you may well have a hierarchical structure and people may work really well organically, we could say, within it, but when it comes to the buck stops here, there hasn't been a authorization or a shift of decision-making authority or risk ownership to lower levels. You would find that the organizational structure still required this person to be responsible for these decisions, and this person is responsible for these decisions. I think where the lines blur is when there's a lot of experience within teams and that, and people can function almost independently because they're very experienced and they know the job and they know where the organization's heading. But if something goes wrong, that's where the blame gets put at the level of decision-making authority.
Sure. So it's more about like accountability and decision making. Yeah. Thank you.
Where it does change, and where you can be in a hierarchical organisation and truly adopt miniature organic structures within, is when there's a paper document authorising the shift of ownership and accountability to another level. So remember things like the RACI document. Who's responsible, who's being held accountable, who needs to know things, who needs to be consulted, those sorts of things. So when those documents are made and authority is given elsewhere, it might be given to a number of people at different levels. So you can make decisions here for that team, you can make decisions here for that team. It might be a very small organic structure within something hierarchical, but normally if it's hierarchical, it's the decision-making authority that rules the roost. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Nicole?
Yeah, our group was also just talking about that we felt like splitting organizational structure into just two structures might be a bit reductionist, and that in other cultures there are lots of other different ways and structures that groups will function. That motivation might be collective rather than intrinsic or individualized.
Yeah, definitely.
I think Kirsty might be able to speak more to that, given your workplace.
Okay.
Yeah,
great.
I
Thanks,
think,
Kirsty.
probably what Nicole, to add to what Nicole was saying, we're talking about how culture might influence the way in which we value the structure that we sit within, particularly for me to sit within a team that works in Indigenous health. It is very organic, and so there's no particular head of department, although the university may label that. There's none. I was also thinking how that applies to, say, community-controlled organisations where there is no particular head, but maybe a board of community members. How that sort of fits into that hierarchical structure. Does that still fit in there, or is that a more organic model? So I think there is a cultural element that might go into how those structures work as well.
Yeah, no, 100% correct. And it definitely will. And that's more than trying to pigeonhole organisations into one or the other. What I'm trying to get across is that you'll see broadly these two different structures, and different structures work well for different types of industries and different types of outcomes that the organisations are trying to achieve. And you guys as leaders, especially if you're trying to implement some sort of change or assert some sort of influence within those, you need to understand what the structure is and who holds the power of decision and who holds the risk management levels, so that you can speak with the right people. That's the underpinning knowledge that you need here, is to understand the organisation that you're in or trying to influence, and how to best navigate it based on whether it's a hierarchical structure or not. That's where we're going. But there will be, and there will be lots of different types of organisational structures, like I said at the start, but broadly we can put them into 2 buckets. Yeah. And remember, everything we do this year, we can spend, years on each of these topics, and they are, you can do master's level in most of these, so you can research at nauseum the variation. But what I'm trying to do over each month is give you all a broad understanding of the different topics, so that you can do your own research and take this further, dependent on where you're sitting right now. I'll be giving you an overarching wave top view of all of these topics, and when you're on the ground trying to make decisions and you're entering a discussion, whether it be on risk management or change or organisational structures or advocacy, any of the topics, you can go, hey, I understand a little bit about that. I know I'm going to need to know a bit more, but I have a starting point. I can talk the talk for a little while, and I know that I've got to go and dig deeper and do my own research so I can be credible within this organisation or within this group or within this team. So I'm giving a very broad level of understanding of a lot of different topics to try and enable you to work as a organisational leader. Speaking of which, good governance. So once again, this isn't turning you into a board member. This is just how to make the right decisions. Recognising that everyone's values, decision-making frameworks, mental models, everyone has their own. And we can't throw people into a bucket and say everyone needs to make decisions the same way. Once again, this is a framework. There are going to be many frameworks out there. So when you're considering making decisions, if you're seeking to improve organisational performance through change or through dynamics of changing structure, you must be able to fall back on that shared vision, the strategy for change, the outcomes you're trying to achieve, and the effect that you want to achieve. Having good governance and a structure like this will help that. So if we start at the top and look at this in a clockwise sort of a direction, you need to ensure that the process that you go through to come to a decision is participatory in nature and consensus orientated. So therefore it isn't dominated by one single perspective or by those lacking in experience or lacking in knowledge about the vision of the organisation or what you're trying to achieve with regards to any sort of change. You also need to be able to hold each other to account for decisions, for behaviour, for actions that are taken within organisations. And in order to make right decisions, we need to be able to gather really good data and be able to share that data and that information and be transparent around where the information comes from and the significance of that data to the decision that you're trying to make. And when you're doing that, please make sure you always try to seek a diverse range of views. Be really open, be open to frank debate, be open to your ideas being challenged, because the more viewpoints you can get, the more differing points of view you can get on that one topic. Because we all have our own biases, we all see things through a certain lens, and what we as good leaders need to be able to do is park that for a little bit and go, okay, these people that I know are going to disagree with me, what is their take on this? And why do they think that? What data has made them think that way about this particular topic? And then you do that from as many varied points of view you can, so that you can make a really strong decision that isn't biased, or it will potentially always be biased, but less biased than normal. We need to be responsive when we're engaging with stakeholders along the way. Like I said before, with regards to differing viewpoints, we need to ensure that we get broad representations of age, gender, cultures, backgrounds, so that the equity and inclusion side of things in all decisions is considered. And we need to make sure that we don't do this half-heartedly. We need to do things completely and efficiently and effectively. Yes, at times we will have to make a decision with the information that we have at hand, but we always seek to get as much information as possible before we make a decision. That doesn't mean procrastinate for months on end and never make a decision because, if I just speak to one more person, I might be better. Do as much as you can to get as much information as you can to make a good decision. But in 6 months' time, if your data changes, and like with Wayne, that decision we made 6 months ago is no longer the right decision, hey, own it. New information's come up. We need to turn left now instead of right. Let's get on board and let's get it done. And yeah, rule of law. Good governance always means upholding values, upholding the rule of law, and engaging in processes and adhering to the decisions that have been made until new information presents itself. Okay. Any questions on that? No? Cool. So, let's think big organisations and who, like proper big organisations, like the college, like hospitals. What sort of internal stakeholders might we need to consider touching base with if we want to make an organisational level decision or have some influence or gain support for an idea at an organisational level? Let's throw some sort of ideas out there, who key positions within organisations that we might need to talk to. No.
Whoever's going to fund it?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. Where are we getting the money? Linda?
Which one? Who we would probably have to talk to people who make decisions and people who do the work. So
yeah, good point. Can you expand on people who do the work? Why is it important to talk to them?
Well, because you need to have them on board. You need to get buy-in. If the decision's coming from higher up and, head of organisation saying this is what we're going to do, yes, they will follow instructions, but they're not as invested. But if you have them on board from early on, you take them along with you on that ride, and they're more likely to have buy-in or to feel like they co-designed or co-contributed to what you're doing. Yeah, and also to take that a step further, often at the executive level, once we're up there, we're not specialists anymore. So we don't know the day-to-day functions and processes that people undertake every single day to make a function happen. And if we want to change that function, what does that mean for the day-to-day operations below? If we change something up here, what unintended consequences might we have down here? So speaking to the people that live it day to day, we'll get that insight. Vanessa?
I think also consulting the people that you're hoping will be impacted by the potential change, or those people that will perhaps benefit from it, because there's no point designing something that isn't actually fit for purpose. and isn't aligned with what you're needing to achieve at the end point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So this is not an exhaustive list. It's just indicative of many business functions that you'll see out there and some areas you might want to keep in mind. So obviously IT, operations, the supply, business development, marketing and comms, education departments, research and development, all those sorts of areas. If consider like Linda and Vanessa were saying, consider the change you want to make and who's it going to affect. What sort of outcome are you trying to achieve and why, and who's it going to affect along the way, and try to get a lot of involvement in that decision making process. So the more people you can have involved from multiple different levels, the more seamless the transition will be, because you're not hitting, oh, we never thought of that. Oh, we never thought of that. Because if you had consulted earlier on, those things might have come up and you might have put things in place to either prevent that issue from occurring or reducing the effect of that issue should it occur. Any questions on the governance or the parts of organisations we might want to consult? Cool. All right, so what we'll do now is we'll move on to group dynamics. So this is social processes, basically, and the interactions that people have within groups. They've studied how group members influence one another, the kind of the roles that they adopt, and there's definite communication patterns that emerge as well within groups, and which all affect how well the group performs and the level of cohesion within the groups as well. Has anyone heard of Tuckman's stages of group development? And if so, do you remember what they are? Jump off mute and have a go.
Is this the meet and greet and socialise and group and whatever it is that they do?
Yes.
Am I making up things now, or is this something I vaguely remember?
You're vaguely remembering it, not the not the headings that they chose. But
Okay,
it's
I forgot that this is being recorded.
Yeah.
Is it the storming, norming, forming?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one.
That's what I meant, Richard.
Cool. All right. Which one might be first? Forming. Let's give you that. Forming. So what do you reckon happens at the forming stage?
I guess does what it says on the box. It's where you form your group together and you get to know each other.
Yeah. How do you think people are acting in the those first days of a new group being put together?
Best manners. I think
definitely.
Everybody's very, very polite, and I think the gloves come off over time as people start to get to know each other.
Yes. Yeah, spot on. So the forming stage is definitely polite, very focused on being cautious. There might be levels of excitement or anxiety, and everyone's kind of uncertain about the pecking order and the roles that people will have within the group. Then we get to the storming phase. So someone else have a go at what storming might be? Yep, Luke?
Just a period of conflict where people's previously masked opinions can emerge.
Ooh, very nice. Previously masked opinions, yes. Yeah, this is where individual personalities start coming out. Disagreements can arise, a bit of conflict. Members might challenge each other on the direction the group needs to go. Those little power struggles come up. People start getting frustrated. Some people might get negative. there'll be differing opinions on goals, levels of responsibility, all that sort of stuff. So that's that storming phase. Then anyone know what the next stage is? So we've come together, we've kind of battled it out for a little bit. Now we hit
norming.
Norming, yes, Maya. Cool. What does that look like?
So more of the calm after the storm, perhaps, where they can move through more productive and cooperative, I guess, dynamics within the group. So the new rules, I suppose, are established for how to operate within that team.
Yeah. Yep. So this is the first stages of good collaboration. Relationships start to build, conflicts start to resolve, and everyone starts to communicate a little bit better. We're starting to recognise each other's strengths and weaknesses. Not really doing much about it at the moment, but the pecking order's kind of getting established. Then we hit performing. So this is where the team really hits its stride. High level of functioning comes in because everyone knows who's best at what jobs. Everyone starts working effectively together towards shared goals. Performance and productivity is at its peak. Problem solving, decision making, very efficient. So that's that performing stage. And then anyone know what the last stage is? Has it popped up in the chat? Adjourning. Yes, thank you, Wayne. Adjourning, or the mourning stage, where we're in mourning because it's the disbanding of the team. Project's over, the task is done, the reason for the team being brought together is gone, and we're all going our separate ways. So hopefully we're celebrating our accomplishments, doing a bit of reflection, writing down lessons learned. There might be a few tears, but we're all transitioning on to new roles or new teams. So this is a natural progression of a team. And the reason we need to know this is because as leaders, if you're bringing a new team together, you can probably expect to see this play out. It might not be, the storming stage might not be so obvious, and you might really have a great group of people that move through those stages to performing really quickly. Others, you may have some strong personalities and you may stay in storming for a long time. And also, you can get to the performing stage, but then one or two people leave and two new people come in, and we're back down to storming all over again. So it's a constant evolution depending on the dynamics of that team. And why we need to know this as leaders is just so we can manage our expectations and we can know what to expect from our team at different levels. So we know that once, in those first couple of weeks when a team's brand new, we're not, if they're not being efficient and they're not working well together, we know why, because this is normal. And we can help them, coach them through those early stages by helping them understand what each other's strengths and weaknesses are, increasing their belonging, increasing their competence, you wouldn't necessarily want to give too much autonomy too early because we don't know skill levels, we don't know levels of responsibility, we don't know how much experience people have. But once we figure that out, then we can start increasing the autonomy as well. Okay, finding out what makes people tick, what intrinsically motivates them, so that we can create the environment where the team works at its best. Any questions on that? No? Cool. Oh, Wayne.
I just sort of playing around with the idea of a strategic leadership that sometimes you might have an expected sort of outcome which you kind of forecast in the adjoining stage, and the how do I phrase it? Like, for the storming, it will be quite necessary to sort of have members be given some sort of, autonomy and freedom to sort of spread their wings and show their gaps and frustrations. Um, but from a strategic point of view, it's almost seemed like, you need that to happen, in
Yes.
order to get to the next phase, even though as a leader in your head, you already kind of have a forecasted adjourning outcome. Is that, I'm not sure
Yes,
if
that's
I'm making
correct. Yeah.
myself.
Yeah, especially if you know you're pulling together a group of individuals that haven't worked together before, you know that you're going to have to progress through these stages, and that you're going to plan for that. And so when you're deciding how long each stage of the project, for example, might take, you might allow more time earlier to achieve some sort of simple level task that you think, oh, that should be achieved in a couple of days. Maybe you actually give it 2 weeks. Maybe you give it a month, because we know that we're not going to hit a performing stage within the group nice and quickly. We're going to have to, we're going to have to battle through for a few weeks, maybe a month, to go through that storming stage before we start settling and therefore being able to be efficient at our timing. So yeah, good point. Think strategically as a leader, especially when you're bringing in new teams, and allow for this, and consider how the speed of your output and how it will be affected. Yeah, good point, Wayne. Thanks. Mirza.
Yep. Any factors which can influence or narrow the periods of any particular stage?
Well, yes. People's experience levels and people's expertise. Like you may be hand picking a team because of their expertise and their experience. So they might get. You might be, if you're hand picking 5 different people for very unique roles. As the team come together, everybody knows, oh, that's the IT specialist. This is the business development specialist. This is the marketing and comms specialist. We're not going to jump into each other's lane. But if you're a random group of people brought together, that's where it will take longer. So if you want to try and speed things up, you would be able to hand pick people for their specific roles and experience. But if you've just got a team brought together, if it's a bunch of new hires, for example, or you've got a short-term project and the talent development team have just hired 5 project managers and said, there you go, here's your 5 people, and you know nothing about them, they know nothing about each other, then this sort of a stage will take a bit longer. And that's probably the only thing that'll help with peaks and troughs with regards to how quickly you move through. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, like the culture of the practice or the culture of the company, it matters a lot to if these people are team players or they are lone wolves. If they're too independent. So I think it's very difficult for them to come together as a group on this,
Yeah, you may well find sometimes that the group that gets together really never hits the performing stage. You might only bounce between storming and norming and crumble over the finish line rather than get to the performing stage. But in a perfect world, you'll hit this, you'll move through these nice and quickly and hit that performing stage. But yeah, once again, it's just to give you an understanding of to expect these things when you've got new groups coming together, and not be surprised when you see your teammates butting heads over things, and it's like, well, this is to be expected. It'll pass. Okay, so in addition to the group stages and the stages of group development, yes, Vanessa.
Sorry, can I just ask what happens if it doesn't pass?
The storming phase.
Effectively the storming. And then you don't get to the therapeutic harmonious result, and you've got like a systems issue or you know, like an organizational problem.
Yeah.
The United States at the moment. It's America.
Sorry, what was that?
It's called the United States. The storming just keeps going.
It's very long storming phase. Yes. So just curious.
It's thanks for the red herring. That's okay. No, but you may well get stuck there, and it depends whether whether it's a permanent hire problem or a temporary hire problem. Because if you're getting contractors in on a fixed term for 6 months, you got to persevere, achieve and work hard, flog them until they give you the output you want, and then move on. But if it's a permanent hire thing, that's where you start having to people manage, and as a leader really get to know your people, what they value, what the conflict is, and come up with some sort of solution to either fix it so people can work well together, or if they can't, how can we employ them elsewhere and get people in that will work well together. Unfortunately, if it's a permanent thing, that's the level it's going to get to. You'll have to move on to achieve efficiency within the group. So in addition to that, there's group functions and behaviours that can be pretty much categorised into task roles, maintenance roles, and self-centred roles. And the framework helps understand how individuals contribute to group dynamics and the overall effectiveness. So I'm going to bounce through these quickly in the interest of time. So members within the group may naturally start falling into these sorts of roles. So you might have the initiator who is really good at coming up with new ideas and new goals or solutions to problems. The information seeker, for example, is the one that's always requesting clarification, seeks relevant information that is going to support decision making, things like that. The opinion seeker is one that probably doesn't make their own decisions. It's always, hey, so what do you think? We haven't asked these people over there. Why don't we get them in it? They can help us with this decision. They're the ones that want to bring people together for decisions. Then looking at maintenance roles, the encourager is the one that is always very supportive and praising others and promotes that positive atmosphere. The harmonizer is the one that always steps in to manage conflict and encourage cooperation. Gatekeeper, they're the ones that ensures everybody has the opportunity to contribute. It's like, hey, we haven't heard from Phil tonight. Why hasn't he spoken up? Let's give him a voice. Standard setter, they're the ones that establish norms and standards for the behaviour of the group, and if someone's getting out of line, they're the ones that are willing to call it out. The self-centered roles, there's dominating, controlling, aggressor type roles where someone's always criticising, creating tension. The blocker is always opposing group ideas, and they kind of fall into a role of hindering progress. There's recognition seekers, someone who always trying to dominate the conversation and control discussions, assert authority, things like that. So you'll see people will naturally fall into one of these sorts of areas. And once again, as a leader, it's just important to understand that people will do these sorts of things, and it's how can I best use those people? If the functions are supportive, how can I best employ that person to really drive the group forward? And if we've got the self-interest side of things, how can I disengage that person from that sort of behaviour and really address that disruptive behaviour and turn it around into something proactive? Find out, why they're jumping into that self-interest column, and how we can flip them into a task-focused sort of a role instead. Linda.
Can I just ask, how do you actually address that behaviour, the self-interest? Because, that comes up and it's hard to kind of, without disregarding or, not paying a whole lot of attention.
Yeah.
What do you suggest? Yeah.
Yeah, I like asking, how does that help what we're doing now? Or can you explain why that's important? I get them talking about the behaviour or their concern, because a lot of the time they just want to be heard, and once they get their voice out, it's like, okay, so I understand that. How is that contributing to what we're doing? And a lot of the time they go, well, it's not really. Oh, okay. So what do you think you could do that would be beneficial? And you put it back in there. Instead of telling them what to do, you open it up to them by getting them to explain their point of view, why they're behaving in that sort of method. And it's like, hopefully they're not bullheaded enough to think that, no, this is contributing. I'm right and everybody else is wrong. Hopefully they're the type of person that realizes, oh, okay, maybe I am not being so fair to the group, and then you put it back in there. Okay, how can you best contribute to this? What would you like to do to contribute to our project moving forward? And then they'll say, oh, I'll do this, and it's like, oh, great, that'll be extremely helpful, thank you. And then they've chosen the job that they're going to do, and then they go off and do it. That's the way I've dealt with it in the past, and normally it works well. I haven't actually had someone who still thinks they're right and progress, so I'm yet to face that decision. But it would probably end up being, like we said before, if it's a permanent thing, it would probably be a performance management line, and you get HR involved, and it's like, okay, this is the disruptive behaviour, this is what we need from you. If it continues, we're going to have to do a formal warning, and then you go down that route.
Okay, thank you. I guess my concern was also that it's often subtle, like not the one who's really oppositional, but it's subtle kind of stuff that's happening in a meeting over and over. But I guess similar techniques.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so as well as the three functions on that previous slide, you can also look at thinking, action, and people orientated roles as well. I've got a description of all of these on the next slide. But basically, Dr. Meredith Belbin came up with this, and there's 9 potential roles or clusters of behaviours that, once again, team members fall into. And using these team roles gives individuals that greater sense of self-understanding and how to use their strengths and understanding their weaknesses, which in turn leads to more effective communication. If you could, an ideal team would have all 9 roles, but if you don't have 9 people, people can wear many hats, have more than one role. So this is what it looks like, and it's a busy slide, but it's so you can read it in your own time and refer back to it at your leisure. I'll continue moving on. We're almost there. So Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team. This is quite common with regards to team leadership. And you look at this diagram from the bottom up, and consider it kind of like building blocks of great teams. So the absence of trust, that's where team members lack vulnerability, which leads to a fear of conflict. And that's when there's a fear of conflict, teams avoid healthy debate. They avoid that and just go with the flow. And that then leads to a lack of commitment, because there's been no healthy debate. People aren't committed to outcomes, and members are not fully invested in the decisions that are being made. And when they're not fully invested in the decisions that are being made, that leads to the avoidance of accountability. So team members don't hold each other to account, which then leads to inattention to the results, which the focus then shifts from collective success to individual goals. And I did my bit, that's sort of a focus. So to create the environment where we can be confident that we're all working towards collective outcomes, we need to ensure that we address each of these aspects. So on the right-hand side there, in the absence of trust, just be human. Encourage that debate, respectful debate. Focus on clarity and closure when it comes to levels of commitment. Confront the difficult issues so everybody knows who's accountable for things, and focus on outcomes at the end of the day. Any questions on that? There's a really good book. Listen to. I would encourage you to look up something on YouTube. Listen to the audio book. Buy the book. It's worthwhile having. Cool. Alrighty. What I'll get you to do now, just to wrap up the day, is jump into breakout rooms again. Consider those last few slides, the roles people play, what type of, forming, storming, norming phases that you've been through. Dysfunctions of a team. Where have you seen the absence of trust or fear of conflict, and what's happened as a result? How has leaders that you've seen before dealt with it? Consider these. What types of people have you seen within groups, and how do those specific roles either enhance or detract? So just talk all through those. What's worked well in groups before, what hasn't worked well in groups before, and how do you think you as a leader can manage negative behaviours within groups, and bounce your ideas off each other. What's worked for you? What's worked for you? We'll spend the rest of the evening doing that, and we'll just come back together for the last 5 minutes to wrap up. Any questions before we jump back into breakout rooms again? Awesome. Yeah, they should be. Sorry, there's a couple of you who haven't been assigned. I'll just assign you now. Have you got yours on your screen there, Kirsty? Yours should be popping up now, Romy. You there, Phil? Excellent. Welcome back. Alrighty, so hopefully that was productive little chat for you. Any really good points covered that anyone feels is worthwhile sharing with the group? Yeah, sorry about that, Wayne. It just no one was in the other group at the time, so I had
No,
to
it was fine. I just
shift people
didn't get
around.
to say goodbye.
Yeah.
We just thought you didn't want to talk to us, Wayne, that's all.
Why, Wayne? Why?
Well, that too, but you know.
Yeah. He messaged me on the quiet and said, "Hey, I don't like this group. Can I
Get me out of
move?"
here.
Cool. All right.
I just have to share. I was in some I was in a webinar once, and I think it was 90 minutes or 2 hours, but they kept putting us in breakout rooms, and I kept being alone, and I kept messaging people and being like, I was like, I'm alone. Does anyone want to move
Again.
me? And then I was like, no, you're putting us in again. Anyway, so Wayne, I empathize. Solidarity.
Thanks.
Cool. All right. Thanks for tonight. Real purpose of tonight is to let you know there's a lot of things going on when it comes to leadership and team leadership and understanding the dynamics both within an organisation largely and within the teams that work within those organisations. So we as leaders need to understand a lot, and we need to get to know our people a lot for us to be really effective as leaders. And one size doesn't fit all. So we need to have an individualised approach to best utilise our people to achieve the best outcomes, both at team and organisation level. Any last questions or comments before we wrap up for the night? Wayne?
In our group, like the second group that I got transported into, we kind of talked about, the balance of, kind of redirecting someone's superpower so that it doesn't end up in a dysfunctional outcome. But I guess my question is, how important is it to have a forecast, a grasp of the forecast of the potential damage before you give out second chances, or when do you cut the cord, so to speak?
Yeah, gosh, good question. Anyone got an answer for that? Mine's very generic, and unfortunately, it's situation dependent because it depends on so many varying factors around that individual. Are they the only person who knows how to do the thing? Is it? Do you have control over whether that person is hired or fired? Are you the direct line manager, or are you just on the side? Can you influence the decision makers who can make a decision about that person? If that person's gone, who's going to pick up the slack? There's lots of bigger considerations around managing someone who's potentially becoming dysfunctional, and also we need to understand that person. Why are they heading down that road? People don't join organisations and seek out a job and apply for a job and win a job to be a dysfunctional person.
Sure.
Most people come in and want to do well and succeed and give it their best. And what's taken them from there to where they are now, and trying to understand that and help them get back to where they were. Or if it's irreparable, help them move on to something that they'll thrive in. Romy?
I actually think this is one of the things where I think I see this with medical educators a lot, where sometimes we forget that we have such a valuable skill set in the context of our clinical practice, that actually is almost directly applicable to lots of other situations. And I think sometimes when we wear different hats, we leave that skill set with the hat that's on the shelf, if you like, and we forget to bring it with us. And you go, actually, like, we're really good at this. Like, it's just dressed up differently, but really the core skills that you're doing here are the same. We just have to think about applying them in a different setting. And we're used to applying them, in our scrubs or whatever, next to our computer in our office or in ED or wherever we're working. That feels really natural because that's where we have honed those skills. But actually, we can take those skills and apply them elsewhere, and I think find it really valuable.
That's a really good point, Romy. Yeah, think about the transferable skills of what you've already got and how to apply them in that different context. Yeah, great point. Anyone else? Awesome.